Welcome. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at this commercial faucet with sprayer. So this was provided to me by the distributor, but they're not compensating me for this video and they're not reviewing it before I post it. If you find this video helpful and you want to purchase one of these, I'll put a link to it in the description, and if you use that link, it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost anything extra. So this is a faucet for a commercial sink. So this would be for like a stainless steel sink like you'd find in a commercial kitchen. So I have this type of sink for my laundry sink, and I just have a standard faucet on it now, which I'll be replacing with this sprayer faucet. So let's get this open. Here we have the installation instructions. Let's take a quick look at these. Now I'm not going to cover everything in here. You'll want to go through it on your own. But here we have the sprayer head. And a nice feature of this is it has a traditional faucet too, so you can choose which one you want to use. So I have just this style right here that would be mounted down on this part. So we have the general instructions. It says turn off the water at the source, hand tighten all parts before using a wrench, do not force parts too much, handle plated surfaces with care, be sure not to scratch them. This shows the different parts. Here we have another breakdown of the parts. This talks about the valve assembly. This shows mounting it on the sink, on the backsplash portion. This talks about the pre-rinse faucet, add-on valve, more instructions on installing this. Looks like there's a wall brace here. Then they have some other kits. Here we have an FAQ and replacement parts. Okay, let's pull this out. So here we have the different parts. This looks like the wall bracket. So this, I think, gets cut down to fit the wall. Here's a riser pipe. Let me just pull this whole section out so we can see what's under it. Okay, so here's the faucet head. So let's take a look at this. So this is rubber here. Looks like plastic here, then rubber on the outside. You have the sprayer handle, and this goes up to lock it in position. So even if you lock it, you're probably going to want to hold onto it. We have a large spring here, and this flex tube. These mount to the backsplash here. And you can see these are eccentric, so you can rotate these to fit different widths. Here's the valve itself. It's very heavy, looks to be made of brass, and we have the valves on both sides. So this will mount like this. This will turn it on and off on both sides. Here's the traditional faucet. We have an aerator on it, and we have some little gaskets, washers, things like that. I think this is another, like a stem. This is the valve for the faucet here. You can see in there. Feels very nice and heavy and sturdy. Looks like we have some washers in there. We have some different anchors. Those would be for this. And we have the threaded pipe that will go into the back of the valve. So I think your supply lines will go onto this. So I'll show more of this as I get it in place. Let me get this pulled out again. So I think I need to do some pre-assembly on this. So pull the valve out. It wants me to get some washers. So it looks like I want this rubber washer. It's going to go on here. And this is going to go on here. It's going to thread on here. So you really just want to hand tighten all of this stuff while you fit it all together. And there is a rubber gasket around here, so when you press that against your backsplash, water won't leak through. So I have that hand tight. Looks like there was already a washer in here. I think it's the same one, but I will swap it. It might just be an extra. They look to be about the same. Now this creates a seal by compressing this washer, so you don't need Teflon tape on here. And I do want to mention that I'm not a professional plumber, but I have a fair amount of experience putting faucets and stuff in over the years. But if you don't feel capable, then you want to find someone to help you. Okay, so those are on there, so you can see these will rotate. So all the way in, center to, well, let's go, yeah, center to center is about 7 3/4 maybe. And then all the way out, getting about 8 3/8, give or take. So these would be 8" on center typically, but you have a little bit of adjustment there. So this is showing the washer on the outside and the gasket on the inside, which are both there already. So then I'll screw in these threaded sections, this threaded pipe. And it looks like they show the distance in here as 7 3/4 by 8 3/8. I think that's about what I had. So this is going to fit through the backsplash, and then we're going to have a washer on there. It does have some grooves on there. I think the grooves are going to go in. Then we have these steel washers, and we have these brass nuts. So that is pre-assembled. Now it comes with these O-rings. I think those go on here. I think those are just extra. And actually I think a lot of these O-rings are just extra. So this assembly I think is just about ready to be installed. Now there's some heft on that, but I'll place that back in here. So now it's showing the pre-rinse valve assembly. So I'll pull this out. Now there's a gasket in there. I think this tube is going to go on like so. It's going to tighten in there. And it looks like the hook is going to go on. And I think if you're looking at this, I think it's going to go in this direction, so it's kind of facing up just a little bit. There's a Phillips screw on here. Let's see if it'll slip on. I'll loosen that up. Okay, let's see if I can slip this over. pretty tight. So again, I'll do final tightening on that later. Oh, but before that, I'm going to have this piece. So this will slide on. This has a little hex key in here to lock it on, but that will go on, and then the hook. And this will get cut down. So this does thread in here, so I can take it off later before I cut it. Below that is the valve. This is going to face up, and that will screw on here. This also has the hex key set screws. And again, these have rubber gaskets, so they shouldn't need Teflon tape on them. You just want to make sure you compress that gasket where it's not leaking. But you do want to make sure those gaskets are in there, because they might have fallen out. And then we have this piece we'll screw on. Now I don't see any reason to connect this up yet, because this assembly will get very heavy. So I currently have the valves, the sprayer, and the faucet. So that's going to go on here with the gaskets. So I'm going to remove my faucet I currently have in my sink, and then we'll work on getting this installed. Okay, so I have the old faucet out. I'm going to want to install these on here. So I have the rubber gasket here, and I've cleaned this surface. So that will go through like that. On the back side I'll have the rubber washer, the metal washer, and the nut. So I have those two pieces on. Now I'll install the faucet, and I'll make sure I have these rubber washers on. There we go. Now I do need to still tighten all of these up. To tighten up these nuts, you want to use a smooth jawed plier, or put some pads on a traditional plier so you don't scratch them. So after putting these in, I realized they're going to be sticking out too far to connect lines to them. So I got these like angled pipes that I can put in. So I'll replace these with these, and then they can connect from the bottom. Okay, so I have the faucet installed. Now I have the sink pulled out. There's no reason to leave it pulled out anymore. I can connect the water back up and reinstall the sink before I put the rest of everything on. Of course, I have the water shut off, and I don't need to turn it on until I get it finally assembled. But I don't need to install the faucet right now because I don't need to access the back anymore. So here we have the back, and I put these elbows on. And before you put all this together, you do need to put these on first. And you need to assemble these in the sink because this won't pass through the hole once these are on. So you want to assemble this side, then thread the whole thing into this. So I'm going to get the sink reinstalled, and I'll reconnect the water. Okay, I have the sink back in place. I did turn the water on with the faucet off to check for leaks before I screwed it to the wall. Now I can continue assembling this. So I'm going to fit the faucet on here. Now I've tightened all the components up. So this has these O-rings, that's going to fit in here, and then this will tighten down on top. Okay, so I've taken the brace tube off, and I want to measure from the wall to here. Now this can move back and forth, so I want to make sure this is straight up and down. And I'll measure that distance, and then I'll start at the thread and go here on the tube, and I'll mark it, and I'll just cut this with a tubing cutter, and I'll cut that to length, and then that will go in here. This will mount against the wall, tighten down with some set screws, and it will thread into here. Okay, so I got this piece cut, and the tubing cutter wasn't going to do it, so I used a hacksaw. So this will thread in here. And then the flange will go on the end. And I'll position that against the wall, and I'm going to drill some holes in the concrete here and put some anchors in. So I'm going to make sure this is straight up and down. I'll mark those, and then I'm just going to remove this whole thing so I have clearance for my drill. Okay, so I have the flange mounted to the wall, and it came with a little hex key. I think it's a 2.5 millimeter. So I'm going to tighten up these little hex keys here to lock everything in. So now that's very sturdy. Now there's also set screws on these threads here, and I'll do a final tightening on this. So the hook has a little screw on the back side, I'll tighten it. Now before I do that, I'm actually going to put the faucet on so I can make sure it's not in the way. So that just has two O-rings. Okay, I have it all together now. So I'll turn the water back on. Let's try this out. So I'll turn both waters on. So I've shut the water off here. So when this handle's up, this is off, so I'll turn that on. And if you use this mainly, you can just leave this on and control it here. And we can shut that off, then we can use the sprayer. So I can move that out of the way, and here we have the sprayer. And that has a nice sharp jet, so if you're rinsing dishes with this, that will blast a lot of the stuff off. A lot of times these are used before you use a dishwasher. So it does have a lock on here. There we go. Now there's enough heft here that it doesn't seem to be flailing around a lot, so I like that. So I got some stuff here when I drilled my hole, I can clean that up. Now one thing to point out here, this has pretty much on and off. It's not variable control, so if you want to vary the rate, you want to do that through your faucets. So I'll hold it on. I don't want a really powerful stream when I clean that because I don't want it to splash back at me. But I can go and, oops, just did it though. Now these handles are kind of back. I could pop the middle out here, and there's a Phillips screw, and I could readjust them. So I may do that later as this settles in. Although if I pull them out straight, it is still off. I really like this faucet. This sink has a sink here and it has a sideboard. If I want to put a bucket here on the sideboard, I can set the bucket there and I can actually fill it from here. So that's very handy. The other one was pretty much if it came off right here and it was a little bit shorter, so it wouldn't reach that far. I can also fill a bucket with this. It might be easier with this so it doesn't splash around as much, but I could just use this to fill a bucket. So when you're done using it, so this is still active here, you do want to make sure you shut off the water on the hot and cold. There we go. So that's the commercial faucet with sprayer and faucet. If you have basic plumbing skills, it shouldn't be too hard to tackle this. You do need to connect it to a wall, and I have masonry wall, so I did have to drill into that with a masonry drill and screw that in. But it wasn't too difficult. I also did have to cut the pipe, but otherwise it was pretty straightforward. The fit and finish on this seems very nice. It's very heavy, so it seems very durable. Now I did have to put the elbows on the back. That wasn't a big deal, but depending on how yours is plumbed, you may need to do that. But I think this is going to be a real nice addition to my sink. So some people may be replacing an existing faucet of the same type. Of course, in my case, I'm replacing a traditional faucet with this. So if you have a commercial kitchen or even just some sort of a wash area with a commercial sink, I think this could be a nice upgrade. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.